Hello, Happy New Year. How are you guys? Hopefully you're doing good. Did you do anything special last night? We did not. I researched this guy. I got a text from my friend Brooks from Crime Lines and Lies, and she wanted to meet up, but it was 7:30, 8 o'clock, and me and my husband were like, nah, girl, we're in our pajamas watching TV, so no. So that's what we did. I researched this guy, and we watched some country music thing, and that was about it. Nothing spectacular. All right. So this is who we're going to talk about today, and I just want to go over just some of the things that are out there, some of the things that we're starting to learn about his background, his previous behavior, that honestly, I feel like and we have to say he's innocent until proven guilty, but if this is the guy that, if he didn't do this before, he definitely would have done it again had he not been caught. I mean, the indicators are there. And we're just going to talk about why. So, Brian Bundy, yeah, we're going to talk about Ted. Yeah, we're going to talk about Ted for sure. And this odd BTK connection. So, we know he's 28 years old. He was arrested at his parents' house in Albrightsville, Pennsylvania. Investigators honed in on Kohberger as the suspect through DNA evidence and confirming his ownership of a white Hyundai Elantra seen near the crime scene. And he had received a ticket in the summer. I want to say it was August, shortly after he moved to Pullman. And he had received a seatbelt ticket. And that's really like the extent of this guy's criminal history. But I'm wondering if that was how they were able to kind of trace it back to him, was through that violation being in the system, because I don't think that he went to the police and said, hey, you know what? I have a white Hyundai Elantra. I don't think that's how it went down. So his dad flew out to Washington, and they drove together cross country in the Elantra back to his family's home in Pennsylvania. I believe there is proof that he and his dad went and got the Elantra serviced on December 16th before starting their trip out to Pennsylvania, and they arrived home. He was just going home for Christmas break. So they were tracking him. Authorities were tracking him as he drove, and they were surveilling him at his parents' house. They had been following him for about 4 days. So I'm assuming from watching him at the parents' house, it was to kind of establish the routine. So they probably knew what time was the best time to go in and make the arrest, because you want to catch him off guard. The last thing you want to worry about is maybe like a standoff or some sort of confrontation. So doing it in the wee hours of the morning, I would assume that's because they knew at that time everybody was probably going to be asleep. So apparently genetic genealogy techniques were used to connect Kohberger to unidentified DNA evidence at the scene. The DNA was run through a public database to find potential family member matches, and subsequent investigative work by law enforcement led to him as the suspect. And we don't know what the DNA evidence is. It's probably blood, but it could be another, how can I say this, male bodily fluid. And we know that there was no SA. But talking about BTK, he left some of his male bodily fluid behind at crime scenes because the act of killing got him off, so to speak. But he didn't assay the victim. So that's a possibility as well. And I'm assuming the blood is probably somewhere it shouldn't have been, like away from the victims, maybe in the kitchen, or, you know, on his way out, maybe even outside or something, you know. In the pictures, you can tell he has a broken nose, and a lot of people are like, oh, I hope one of the victims broke his nose during the attack, and that would be great, but I'm pretty sure that it was from before, and that had he had a broken nose, they would have noticed in class, because he continued to go to his classes and work as a teaching assistant and everything all the way up until he left with his dad in December. So, I mean, he could have got hit in the nose and had a bloody nose or something, but he probably cut himself, at least maybe a small cut on his finger or something like that. He was arraigned Friday morning in Pennsylvania and was being held without bond. So our man is going to do us a favor and waive his extradition hearing, which I was kind of surprised, because I figured this guy's going to make it as hard as possible. But now that he has, and what has come out, I'm kind of thinking that he's kind of doing this maybe to be cocky. So here's the press release. And his public defender, whose name is LaBar, I don't remember his first name right offhand, but the Monroe County Public Defender says that Mr. Kohberger is eager to be exonerated of these charges and looks forward to resolving these matters as promptly as possible. So apparently he is just eager to get back and prove his innocence, which is interesting. Because now I call them educated idiots. You know, there's a lot of people out there that are book smart, but not street smart. And I was hoping maybe this guy was one of those, you know, like really, really intelligent, but not very street smart. But you think about all the years that he has put into studying this field, right? And honestly, he's the only one that knows the crime scene besides law enforcement. So he's had all this time to go back and think, like, where did he mess up? Where might he have left DNA and things like that? So is he already, and I fully believe that he probably had a plan in place were he to get caught. So is he already coming up with a way that any potential DNA evidence they're going to be able to get that thrown out somehow. They quit cleaning the house. That was a court order. We don't know from who. Was it on behalf of the suspect? Because his team will have the right to go in and look at the crime scene, right? So, there's lots of things that we can think of, as far as the scene. Was it contaminated in any way? What are they going to be able to say? What are they going to be able to say? Or does he have some story of some legitimate reason that his DNA being found there isn't unusual? Because Kaylee's parents said they're starting to see connections. And we're going to get into that later. Let me look at the chat real quick. Yes, Happy New Year, everyone. Hello, everyone. Let's see. Hey, Smarty got arrested. Yeah, I mean, he messed up, and they all do. I feel like this guy was studying this, honing his craft to become like the untouchable serial killer, the one that wouldn't be caught, the ultimate serial killer, that he was going to be the one. And he strikes me as the kind of guy that thinks he's smarter than everybody in the room and thought he could outsmart the cops, which is very Bundy-like. And Sissy, I agree. Is he stupid enough to be his own attorney? I thought that right off the bat. Is this going to be another Bundy? Will he try to represent himself? Or, we've always got those attorneys out there, like Jose Baez, right? And Casey Anthony, that they want to represent these people. This is their chance to make their mark, right? Is it going to be some attorney come along that for whatever reason wants to represent this guy? Or I don't know that they'd be able to afford a high-priced attorney because the family has filed for bankruptcy twice, but they do have a really nice house. This is their house in Pennsylvania where he was arrested. So it'll be interesting. He's got the public defender right now, but that's only for the extradition, and he's waived that. So when he comes back to Idaho, will he continue to have a public defender? I'm sorry if you hear all that in the background. My husband's working on something right now. But I'm anxious to see where this all goes. So, let's see. Kohberger is a resident of Pullman, Washington, and his apartment is about 9 minutes from 1122 King Road in Moscow. In June of 2022, he finished his graduate studies at DeSale University, where he had also been an undergrad. He got an associate's degree from Northampton Community College in 2018. It was at DeSales University where he conducted his research study to understand how emotions and psychological traits influence decision-making when committing a crime. And if you don't remember, if you weren't here in the live, which I think all of you were, but we can take a look at that again. I think the more I think about it, I kind of wonder if this survey that he did somehow satisfied him for a while. Was he kind of vicariously living through the people that were responding, really getting into their minds? Was that enough to satisfy him for a while? I don't know. But the introduction, it says, research participation needed. Hello, my name is Bryan, and I am inviting you to participate in a research project that seeks to understand how emotions and psychological traits influence decision-making when committing a crime. In particular, this study seeks to understand the story behind your most recent criminal offense, with an emphasis on your thoughts and feelings throughout your experience. In the event that your most recent offense was one that led to a conviction, you may still was not one that led to a conviction. Sorry. Those are probably the ones you really wanted, were the guys that didn't get convicted, right? Additional surveys are included after the open-ended section as to best understand your unique traits. The study should take about 15 to 20 minutes to fully complete. Your identity and all answers provided are completely confidential, and blah, blah, blah. All of his how to contact him information. So let's go through his questions again because they still freak me out. It says, please note the following survey asks you to detail your most recent criminal offense, whether you were caught or not. In the event that you were not charged, convicted, or incarcerated for the offense, you may still participate in this research. Have you ever been incarcerated? What age were you when you committed your most recent crime? Which category best represents your most recent crime? Were you convicted of your most recent crime? Did you commit the crime alone? The following open-ended questions provide you with a chance to anonymously detail your experience committing your most recent criminal offense. Any important actions, emotions, or thoughts should be thoroughly detailed. How was your life right before the crime occurred? Did you prepare for the crime before leaving your home? Please detail what you were thinking and feeling at this point. How did you travel and enter the location that the crime occurred? After arriving, what steps did you take prior to locating the victim or target? Example, person or object. Please detail your thoughts and feelings. Why did you choose that victim or target over others? Before making your move, how did you approach the victim or target? Please detail what you were thinking and feeling. What was the first move you made in order to accomplish your goal? Please detail any thoughts and feelings at this point. How did you accomplish your goal? Please explain what you were thinking and feeling. Before leaving, is there anything else you did? How did you leave the scene? After committing the crime, what were you thinking and feeling? What follows are surveys that are important to understanding your unique traits. I mean, it's like he's asking all the questions, like he wants to know the details so he knows, like, okay, they did this and that didn't work, or they did this and it did work. So, kind of like, crafting his plan through this freaking survey. Let's see. Hello, everybody. Hello, Mrs. Kelly. You're doing dishes? You can come here and do dishes when you're done. Yeah, Mrs. Kelly, his thesis is probably out there unless they pull it, because they've pulled a lot of his stuff offline already. Now this stuff here, this is what really is interesting to me. A lot of his former classmates have started coming out talking about him, just kind of describing him. And this is where I think we can learn a lot about this guy. And this is the kind of stuff that law enforcement wants, is people that knew him, interacted with him, things like that. That's the information that they're still looking for. So, former classmates of Kohberger said he was an intellectual who was interested in the way the mind works. He was bullied for his weight and social awkwardness, which I think is significant. If you've been here with me from the beginning, we have discussed that this seemed very like a school shooting, that the person that committed this crime could be similar to someone that gets pushed too far, snaps, and does a school shooting. And I felt like that from the beginning, that there was something about this crime that just had that vibe to it. So it's probably a miracle this guy wasn't a school shooter, to be honest. In Pennsylvania, he was known as a genius who was socially awkward and had a tough time picking up on social cues. A girl he went to Pleasant Valley High School with said he was shy and kept to himself and had a small group of friends. But some of their classmates, especially girls, mocked him and threw things at him. She went on to say it was bad and that there was definitely something off about him, but they couldn't tell exactly what it was. And I think that's significant too. He was bullied, but specifically here, she says he was bullied by girls. And this could be where his resentment started. She said that she heard other girls tell Kohberger in high school to go away, creep, or I don't want to hang out with you. And this person says she believes that's what led up to this because he didn't get the proper help and it was mainly females that bullied him. Despite the bullying, she said his grades were always good and he was very into his books. That continued at Pennsylvania's Northampton Community College. According to one of his friends there, he was really, really intelligent, a bright kid, someone who stood out even in honors and high-level classes. She said he was awkward and intelligent, but not someone you would peg for violent. She went on to say that he didn't interact with many people on campus, but was friendly with her, and they talked for hours about his struggles with heroin addiction and his weight, and they kept in touch after they graduated. She feels like he was never listened to or heard by his peers. She said she would almost translate for him in classes. She explained that he was genuinely curious and believed that he lived a sheltered life, so he asked questions or said things to other people that they construed as being offensive. She explained it wasn't meant to be offensive. It was like a childlike curiosity from an adult who you would think would know better than to ask a question, but it was such a genuine curiosity. That's why she thought he was so sheltered, that he just had no idea about these things. She believes he just really didn't know better. And that's kind of a common trait that you see in serial killers, like they're antisocial or socially awkward. This guy, they said he didn't pick up on social cues. He's asking questions that are inappropriate. And she's having to kind of be the go-between between people at school and be like, you know, when they get offended, be like, no, he didn't mean anything by it. He just, you know, he doesn't know any better. Or telling him, like, you can't ask people stuff like that, you know? So it seems like, you know, in high school, college, this is just kind of a theme that carries. You know, he never seems to get past this social awkwardness or not picking up on social cues and things like that. He remains that way. These comments were echoed by a classmate at Washington State's Criminology and Criminal Justice graduate program, where he was at when the crimes occurred. He said he honestly just pegged him as being super awkward. He took several classes with Kohberger, who sought to be seen as intellectual and was always looking for a way to fit in. He said one thing Kohberger would always do, almost without fail, was find the most complicated way to explain something, adding that he had to make sure you knew that he knew it. So this guy he wants you to know he's smarter than you. He wants you to know that no matter what you think, he is better than you. You are not smarter than him, and he's going to prove it. And whatever he has to do that, like his intellectual status apparently was his identity. Like that meant everything to him. You know, he had to be the smartest, the brightest. Sorry, my throat is still kind of Okay. So he graduated from Pleasant Valley High School in 2013, and then he worked part-time as a security officer for Pleasant Valley School. He ended that job in August of 2021. Before going to WSU, he graduated from DeSales University in 2020 with a bachelor's in psychology. In the spring of 2022, he received his master's in criminal justice, also from DeSale University in Pennsylvania. Kohberger was a student of DeSale's forensic psychology professor, Catherine Ramsland. Let me pull her up here because this, to me, I was just like, whoa, no way. No freaking way. If you guys know me, you know BTK is like, I did a research paper on him. He fascinates me. BTK is my guy. If there's been a book or a show or anything about him, I've probably read it or seen it. So he was a student of Catherine Ramsland, who's in this picture. She wrote a book, and there's a series on, I want to say it was A&E, and it's the BTK Confessions. The book is Confessions of a Serial Killer. And during her research in the show, BTK is calling her from his prison cell. And they're talking on the phone regularly. And before he would talk to her, he sent her like all these weird puzzles, like, you know, anagrams and cryptograms and things that she had to figure them out. And had she not been able to, he wouldn't have agreed to do the interview. He wanted to make sure, I guess, she was like on the same level as him or whatever. But they talked a lot in preparation. And this book that came out, I think it's actually a book that is listed as being authored by her and him, Dennis Rader. Excuse me, but I'm not sure. I can't remember off the top of my head. But this was his professor, and she's written a lot of books. A lot. How to Catch a Killer, The Mind of a Murderer, dozens. She's also consulted with several TV shows focused on crime, including CSI. Then I wrote down about Confessions of a Serial Killer, biography of Dennis Rader. BTK tortured and murdered 10 people, including a family of 4 in Wichita, Kansas in 1974. His murders spanned decades, and he wasn't arrested until 2004. So why I was like, wow, that was his professor. BTK is one of the most successful in his killings. He went for decades. Now, as serial killers do, he had breaks. And they seem to kind of correlate with, like, if one of his kids were born or things like that. But over this huge time span and all these murders, he wasn't on the radar. And how he ends up getting caught was a very stupid mistake. Very stupid mistake. I was just like, wow, really? After all that time, and that's what brought you down. But for a guy like Bryan Kohberger, I think he would be fascinated with BTK and how he got by with it for so long, because BTK was like in their faces. You know, he is, you know, sending letters to the police, to the TV stations, to the newspapers. He's leaving little clues around in weird places. He even called in one of his own murders to 911. So this is probably Kohberger's dream right here, is to be able to learn from BTK. So I was going to bring this up later, but I'm going to bring it up now because I think it's a good time. So we're talking about BTK, and I follow his daughter on Twitter. And one of the things that they used to bring down BTK was DNA And she had had a pap smear done at her college, and they were able to get her DNA, and that tied back to BTK, which is interesting. But that's not that's not the kicker. So on her Twitter, she says, Dr. Catherine Ramsland is one of Bryan Kohberger's professors in criminology studies, at DeSales University, where he earned a master's degree last spring. Ramsland has, or did have, a close academic relationship and friendship with my father, Dennis Rader, BTK. I have ongoing concerns knowing how common it is for criminology students, true crime fans, and others to correspond regularly with my father. That Kohberger could have been in contact with my father at some point, but require proof of this, which currently I do not know of. I was just like, holy crap, Kohberger could have been in contact with BTK. I mean, think about that. Oh, sorry, Princess. Yeah, I'm glad you had your earbuds off, too. They're so loud. She goes on to say, my father and his many murders are studied intensively in the field of criminology. And I can tell you they are. I believe strongly in the training of future law enforcement, criminology, and forensic minds, and give lectures myself to further education in these fields. My father graduated with a bachelor's in criminal justice from Wichita State University, making a mockery of this important field, using his college courses to study his own ongoing murders and get access to law enforcement information in the 1970s. My thoughts have been with the victims, friends, and families, and law enforcement since news broke of this horrific crime, and my thoughts are also with Kohberger's friends and family at this time. Which I understand her saying that because as the daughter of a serial killer, she's obviously going to empathize with his family. She says, it's my hope justice will be served fully. The ripples of one man's horrific actions will be felt for generations, affecting not only the families, but the wider Idaho community, the supporting law enforcement and criminology communities. We must continue to work together to seek answers to these crimes, stop these predators quicker, and find ways to prevent these crimes from happening at all. So that's a lot. Let that sink in. BK could have been in contact with BTK. And it would make sense. Because his professor, before she published the book, which came out in 2016, there was a long period there that she was in contact with BTK. And I will have to go back and look and see what the exact dates are. But what if she was working on this while he was a student of hers? And she's talking about working on this book with BTK. And he's, undoubtedly asking questions and things. God, I hope he didn't help with any of the research. I don't know, but it's mind-blowing. And he could have contacted BTK and said, hey, I was a student of, and that's his in, right? Because BTK and her were friends and they had this relationship. So it's just something to think about. When I saw it, I was just like, holy crap. Okay, let's see what you guys are saying. No, I don't think he will take himself out. No, he will. I don't think he will. Yeah, Betty, yeah, everybody says the parents were very sweet people. Yeah, Honey Badger, thank God it's not in Florida. I agree, Steph. They eventually got Dahmer, so. Yeah, I mean, and that's the thing. It's not just BTK, it's all the serial killers, right? They all have fans. Now, I wouldn't say I'm a fan, but I am very into BTK. Not, I mean, I'm fascinated by what his process was and that he went undetected for so long and things like that. I mean, if you looked at me and like what I majored in school and the papers that I wrote and the things that I did, you know, you could probably say, you know, I had the potential to become a Bryan Kohberger, but not all of us go off the rails that way. You know, we can be fascinated by these people and not be fans of their work. You know what I mean? But there are people out there that are, and they write to these people. They want to marry these people. They want to be friends with these people. I don't know. I don't understand it. And I don't know why it's allowed. I don't know why the prisons let them get those letters, but they do have a lot of fans. They really do. A student who was in a criminology class that Kohberger was the teacher's assistant in said he seemed disengaged most of the time and was a harsh grader. They stated that he was definitely kind of a creepy guy. The student said Kohberger seemed more distracted and disheveled in the days after the killings, letting his facial hair grow out. And they said he was showing up to class and he was like really tired, and like normally he would like have a cup of coffee with him because he was really tired. And another criminology student in one of his classes said he always seemed a little bit on edge. The student said that they just assumed he was kind of shy. One of his sisters is a behavior technician and therapist, and the other is a therapist specializing in trauma and regulating emotions. His dad is a maintenance worker, and his mom is either a teacher or a substitute teacher. I've seen both. But apparently, like I said, the parents are supposed to be so sweet, and it's kind of heartbreaking. A lot of people are like, oh, I wonder if they knew. And I don't feel like they're like what I call the dirty laundries. I don't think they're like Brian Laundrie's parents. I don't. I feel like they were probably blindsided by this. I feel like if the dad, I think the Elantra was registered to his mom, if what I'm hearing is true. And the dad flew out there to drive back to Pennsylvania with him. If they suspected, I feel like the dad would have been like, you know, hey, maybe we should, you know, call the police. I'm sure Brian was like, oh, I already told him about the car and it was cleared. But I feel like if they had an idea that maybe they would have said or done something, but I could be wrong. I mean, I like to see the best in people, but I'm kind of surprised with his sisters being in that line of work, knowing that he had been bullied and how socially awkward he was and things like that, that maybe they didn't see signs, but maybe they just weren't that close. I don't know. Investigators executed a search warrant on his apartment in Pullman, and they showed up there. It was the day of the arrest. They got there. It was like 7:30 in the morning, and at 7:30 that night, they were still there. That's his apartment. The apartments they're owned by the university, and it's graduate student housing and for students that have families. And it seems like nobody in the complex, you know, had any suspicion at all that, you know, there would be anything like this with this guy. They also searched his office at the university, and I'm wondering, beyond, because they took out a bunch of stuff. They took out like big computer towers and boxes and bags and suitcases and a trash bag and all kinds of things. And beyond that kind of stuff, they're still looking for the weapon. And I feel like he kept it as like a souvenir or trophy. He seems like the kind that would. But originally I was like, okay, that's a long drive from Washington to PA. He could have thrown it out anywhere. But if his dad was with him, it still could have been done, I guess. But I don't know. I feel like he kept it, or he has it somewhere that it's accessible to him to go back to. So hopefully they found it, or they will find it. I mentioned earlier that the Gonsalves family says that although they don't know the suspect, they have started seeing connections between their daughter and Kohberger. However, they're not ready to discuss those connections. I did find out that he is 6 feet tall and he weighs 185 pounds. So we had talked about, he was probably a tall guy, an athletic guy. I think Ethan was 6'3", but now this is interesting to me. So a relative said that he is OCD about his eating habits, that he was so radically vegan that he made his family buy new pots and pans that had never been used to cook meat. If I had ever gone to my parents and said, y'all need to buy new pots and pans because I am not eating out of those, I can't probably say on YouTube what they would have said to me, but I'm sure it would have been, if you want new pots and pans, go buy them yourself. But what I found interesting about that is if you type in vegan restaurants in the Moscow area, which Pullman is in the Moscow area, the first one that pops up is Mad Greek, which is where Maddie and Xana worked. And if you've been with me from the beginning, you know that early on I said it could have been a customer that got fixated with one of the girls where they worked at the Mad Greek. It happens a lot that people get fixated on waitresses. So is that maybe where this started? Is that where he maybe ran into them and kind of became fixated on them? If they were pleasant to him or nice to him when he was a customer there, he may have made more out of it in his head, like we've discussed in previous videos. And when they started talking about the connections to Kaylee, I started thinking about the car. We know Kaylee got the Range Rover. She was selling her car in, I believe it was October. The Elantra allegedly is in his mom's name. Is there any way that maybe he mentioned looking for a car or something like that, and Maddie or Xana said, hey, our roommate's selling a car? Or did he see the post that she made about trying to sell the car, and maybe he inquired about buying the car? I don't know. I'm just wondering if the connection with Kaylee is going to be something like that. Or if he met her indirectly, like maybe she came in to visit Maddie or Xana when they were working or something like that. And I wonder if he was her stalker that she thought she had. I mean, sometimes you just get a vibe and you can feel it. Like if somebody's watching you, you can tell. You just get that gut feeling, right? Could he have been following her? Could he have been watching these girls for a while? I still feel like he or whoever, because like I said, innocent until proven guilty, right? They were watching these girls for a while. I completely think they were watching for a while, learning about the house, the patterns, who was where, when they came and went, and things like that. And maybe he was the stalker. And I also wonder if he was creepy guy from the corner club. But we're going to get into that in a little bit. But I think Mad Greek might be where he encountered them. Let's see here. So a friend said in Kohberger's junior year, he was down to earth and he was overweight. But at the start of senior year, he returned thinner than a rail, and had turned aggressive and taken up boxing. The friend recalled how their friendship had soured, saying he always wanted to fight somebody. He was bullying people. We started cutting him from our friend circle because he was 100% a different person. So, let me see here. This is a picture of him from the yearbook, and you can see that he's kind of heavy. And then we've seen pictures of him like this, where he almost looks sick. He's so thin. So, I don't know if that, I mean, I think it's the same time frame as when he was doing heroin in high school. And then the boxing, I'm assuming, would have led to some weight loss. But is this also maybe the same time that he started this radical veganism? I don't know. So I read somewhere that initially we know he was put on suicide watch. In his picture, he's wearing the little suicide smock that you can't tie in a knot and hang yourself with. But apparently he is still being held by himself and they're keeping an eye on him, but he's not technically on suicide watch as he is preparing to prove his innocence. His extradition attorney, Jason Labar, said that Kohberger is shocked but will work with investigators to clear his name. Labar said Kohberger is shocked a little bit but is calm right now. The attorney says he spoke with the Kohberger family, who said they are shocked by the developments and that this is out of character for Bryan. So, there's that. Okay. Classmates at WSU have said that he became more chatty in their criminology class after the murders in November. They said it seemed like he had cheered up. However, they also noted that he would become deadpan and silent when the stabbings were discussed. One student in the same criminal justice graduate program as Kohberger said he appeared more animated and talkative following the murders. She said he seemed more upbeat and willing to carry on a conversation. Apparently, he didn't really have any reaction to the murders. The student said that was odd because everyone else was glued to the case and speculated on the lack of public information. She said they had quite a long conversation about it in class, and she doesn't believe he commented about it at all. And I mean, can you imagine? You're in a criminology program and these happen like right down the road. Yeah, you're going to have major discussions about it, right? So she described him as a smart and quiet student with an interest in forensic psychology. She added that he did keep a distance from his classmates due to anti-LGBTQ plus comments he allegedly made in class. She said he sort of creeped people out because he stared and didn't talk much, but when he did, it was very intelligent and he needed everyone to know he was smart. And then we've got, I think her name is Casey Arntz, but on Facebook it's Casey Farts. She put up a video. She's an old friend of Kohberger's. She said she last spoke to him 5 years ago when they attended the same wedding. She said at that time in 2017, he appeared to be doing well and had gotten clean after he allegedly used heroin in high school. Casey's brother described Kohberger as a bully who would happily note his friend's flaws and insecurities in order to distract from his own weight struggles. So I'm going to show you Casey's video here that she has since took down.
Okay, I don't have many followers, so I'm not sure who this is going to reach out to, but regarding the case of the 4 Idaho students that were slain and the arrest that was made, I used to be friends with Bryan Kohberger during my middle and high school years. And then before anyone comes at me and says that I'm just running for clout, I'm not. I have pictures that I will show you. I have screenshots that I will show you. I have yearbook pictures that I show you. I went to school with the kid. I was friends with him. I wouldn't make something like this up. I am just in absolute shock right now. I was heading to lunch when my mom called me, and immediately I knew something was off because I have the type of family that we don't call each other. So if someone does call someone we know something's bad. She called me and asked me about the murders. I didn't know where she was going with it until she said that it was Bryan Kohberger, and naturally I freaked out and called about 8 of my friends. My brother was really good friends with him. My other friend Brandon was really good friends with him. I'm gonna have a picture of him with him on the green screen as well. I'm shaking still, but anyway, let me show you. This is Brandon, the one I was just talking about. That's his wife Brianna, and that's me. This was back in 2017. Obviously that's Bryan. Still has the dead face, that it's the eyes, I don't know. But when I spoke to him back in 2017, he was clean. He was a heavy heroin user back in high school, and it was just nice to see the kid clean up. And at that time, he said he was doing security detail. I believe it was at a school is what he told me. But he seemed like he was better. Obviously, that wasn't true. Here's another picture from a party that we had at Brandon's house. That's Bryan there. He used to be a bigger kid as well. But again, that's him. And then at the same wedding, I'm here, but he's back there. He was sitting at the same table as me and my mother. But he is back there enjoying a drink. I was sitting right next to him. We talked. He seemed fine. My mom sent me the old school yearbook. That was him. Bryan Kohberger, that's him. He went to Pleasant Valley. Graduated with, I think, my friend Christopher, a year younger than me. This is when he nonchalantly decided to make me drive him around the Poconos for heroin, and I had no idea. I thought I was just doing a nice deed because he needed something, and it turns out that he was getting heroin. Sorry, my voice is shaking. I might make a part 2. I probably have to. I don't have a 6-minute feature. I only have a 3-minute feature. I also talk really fast, so I'm sorry.
For everybody that's been asking where Steve is, you might hear him. He's been hollering the whole time the video was playing. He waited till I muted the microphone. See, now he's being quiet. So when he was arrested, he said, he asked if anyone else had been arrested. Chief Fry came out yesterday and said that they believe he's the only one involved. But it's interesting because when John Wayne Gacy was arrested, he said, "Did you arrest the others?" And people are kind of drawing similarity lines between him and other serial killers, which I have too. And with Gacy, I think, he never really... He said he felt more like a victim himself and never really took responsibility for killing anybody. And I think that was his way of just trying to make it seem like there were other people involved, and there weren't. And a lot of people are wondering if that's what Bryan was trying to do, was to make law enforcement think there's others involved when they're not. But it remains to be seen still if there was anyone else, maybe even driving the car or whatever. I all along have thought it was a one-person thing, so we'll just have to see what happens with that. And then Charles Manson's birthday is November 12th, and the murders were committed on the night of the 12th, morning of the 13th. And then, of course, our buddy Ted. 2:45 a.m. at the Chi Omega sorority house, Bundy checked into a boarding room close to the FSU campus, where he would be able to observe the college women. In the early hours of January 15th, at around 2:45 a.m., Bundy crept inside the Chi Omega sorority house through a back door. Bryan observed the victims, entered through a back door, and committed the murders around the same time. So that's just a few of the similarities that people are kind of putting together. When Chief Fry spoke, he also said that more than 400 calls came into the tip line within 1 hour after news of the arrest broke. So that's good. A lot of people, now that they have a name and a face, are able to provide more information. Some of Kohberger's college classmates have been told only to talk to police about their interactions with them because they could potentially be called as character witnesses in the case. His 11th and 12th grade teacher said he was a good kid and never in major trouble. He was passionate about criminal justice. He was just a regular 12th grader, had a few friends, was a good student. The teacher thought he would become a police officer or correctional officer. Okay, now this I'm going to put up. We have a new thing that I've added here. We're going to put up the salt, okay? Because this kind of needs to be taken with a grain of salt. Anytime I hear, sources close to or anonymous source or whatever, I kind of, So we're going to take this with the salt, okay? So we know he was under surveillance for 4 days. We know that. An anonymous source who said a good friend of theirs was one of the cops following Kohberger stated that Kohberger was being careful not to leave fingerprints or DNA behind by taking protective measures in public. Cops followed him into a local grocery store in Pennsylvania, and allegedly Kohberger wore gloves the whole time. So for this, I was like, okay, what kind of gloves? Like, it's winter. So was he wearing winter gloves? Because I know there were times when we lived places that it was cold, like Illinois. If I was running into the store and I had my gloves on from outside, like I always have cold hands, cold feet, I might grab my stuff and never take my gloves off, Now, if he's wearing like, surgical gloves or something, then yeah, that is a little odd. But I think more people would have noticed that kind of behavior, right? So I'm not saying he wasn't doing this on purpose, but maybe leaving his gloves on wasn't for that purpose. But it very well could have been. But if he was doing that, especially in Pennsylvania, it really makes me feel like he knew he was under surveillance. Because I could see doing that type of behavior back in the Moscow Pullman area, right? Where it's like an active investigation. But when you're across the country in Pennsylvania, why would it even be in your mind that somebody, I guess him studying this stuff, maybe he knew there was a chance that he was being surveilled, but I didn't really know what to make of it, so that's why I threw the salt up there. Okay, and this is interesting as well. It brings me back to what I said about could he have been the guy that was creeping girls out at Corner Club. So he harassed female staff at 7 Siren Brewing Company near his hometown of Albrightsville, Pennsylvania. The owner said employees labeled Kohberger in their system as a guy who makes creepy comments and said he once called a staffer a bitch for spurning his advances. So the owner said that at this brewery, they have a system where they scan your ID and employees can make notes in there about customers like this guy. If he's causing issues, they can make notes in there so everybody kind of knows, like, hey, keep an eye out for this guy. According to the staffer's notes, he would have 2 or 3 beers and then get a little too comfortable. The behavior was so upsetting that the brewery owner approached him about it. The owner said that Kohberger usually sat alone at the bar, observing and watching. He would ask women, staff, or customers who they were with and where they lived. If the women weren't interested, he would get upset with them a little bit. When the owner approached him about his behavior, Kohberger was shocked and said, "I don't know what you're talking about. You have me totally confused." He then just stayed for 1 beer and he never went back to that bar again. So that kind of behavior, he's creeping women out, right, at this place in Pennsylvania. And then we hear about the guy getting kicked out of Corner Club because he was creeping women out. Could it have been him? Now, as far as the car goes, let's go ahead because I see a lot about that in chat. So, this is the car they were looking for. These are the stock images that they put out. and this is a stock image. His Elantra was a 2015. They were looking for 2011 to 2013. I don't see that much difference. His is this one here in the middle. This one here. I don't really see that much difference in the cars that would be noticeable, like if you saw it just going by quickly on surveillance. But some people that lived in the apartment complex with him did say that yes, they noticed the Elantra there. Yes, they knew he drove the Elantra. One girl said that she didn't call it in because her boyfriend told her not to, because he didn't want her getting involved, like getting too close to the investigation. And others said they assumed it had been cleared. Now, whether it was called in by somebody there, I don't know. But I kind of see what they're saying. Like, this guy's still driving this car around and it's just parked out here in the, wide open, not being hidden in any way. It must have been cleared because everybody can see it and he's driving it around all over the place. It must have been cleared. So, sorry if you hear the dogs growling. So I kind of find that interesting that her boyfriend didn't want her getting involved, and then others just making the assumption that that car had been cleared. And it's pretty ballsy of him, right? He didn't get rid of the car. He didn't try to hide it. He didn't stop using it. Could it have been something as dumb as he thought, well, they've got the wrong year. Mine's a 2015 and they're looking for a 2011 to a 2013. So they're not going to connect me. I don't know. Because like I said, he had gotten a seatbelt violation in that car in, I believe, August. So they would have had his name, his plate, the type of car, whatever in the system. And apparently this Elantra is part of what ties him to it. They towed it from the house in Pennsylvania. And, even being in his mom's name, he had access to it. He was using it. So it still ties back to him regardless. So I just wanted to bring that up because a lot of people are talking about the car, and yeah, people did see it. People did notice it, but a lot of them just assumed it had been cleared. So we were talking about, a lot of people out there are saying, like, why is everybody comparing him to a serial killer? He's not a serial killer. Well, no. Right now, he's a mass murderer. We don't know if he's done anything in his past that he hasn't been caught for, but I fully believe he was a budding serial killer that had this guy not been caught, at some point down the road, he would have done it again. And I might be wrong, but that's just what I believe. So some of the comparisons that in my head have started coming together are these. So I'm going to start with BTK because, like I said, that's my guy. I know the most about him because I did a very long, extensive research paper and presentation on the guy. BTK, Dennis Rader, he studied criminal justice, worked in security, wanted to be a cop, and Dennis Rader killed 4 people his first time out. He did not intend to kill 4 people on his first time out, but the husband had taken the day off work and 2 of the kids were home from school. He wasn't prepared for that, but he went with it, on the fly. He just adjusted, and his first time out, he killed 4 people. If this is Kohberger's first time out, he also killed 4 people. Same majors, both worked in security. Golden State Killer, Joseph DeAngelo, studied sociology and criminal justice. He actually became a cop. Our man Ted Bundy went to law school, worked at a suicide hotline, oddly enough, with author Anne Rule. So there's a connection with him and a crime author, as well as Bryan Kohberger and a crime author, which I thought was interesting. Ed Kemper and John Wayne Gacy, they hung out with law enforcement. So they do these things to kind of, they want to be close to it. They want to know the inner workings. They want to know how stuff is done. And they study it, whether it be at a college level or like Ed Kemper and John Wayne Gacy, they study it just from being around them, being in those circles, listening to what they talk about, talking about like, hey, what are you guys investigating? Like, what's going on with this? What's going on with that kind of thing? So it's interesting. And I mean, the list probably goes on and on and on, you know, of similarities between him and other serial killers. Not all of them go to school for it. Not all of them are highly educated, but they're out there and they study it for a reason. Like BTK's daughter said, he studied it and was studying his own crimes, you know? Part of me wonders if, you know, we heard in 11th and 12th grade, he was fascinated with criminology and he likes horror movies and police movies and things like this. And was it already starting because of the bullying and stuff? And he goes into this field and maybe at first he's just trying to understand like what was going on in his own mind. Why was he feeling the things that he was feeling, you know, studying like-minded people, you know, just trying to figure himself out. But at some point, a switch flipped, and instead of trying to learn about people like him and preventing himself from becoming like them, he decided that he could do better than them. We know he likes to be the best. Maybe he started thinking he was smarter than all of these other killers. That he was the smartest of them all. He was going to be the one that finally pulled it off. You know? I don't know. It's very interesting, though. Okay, let's see what's going on in chat. Exactly, Betty. Well, and another thing about BTK, he called his victims projects. He would pick out a project and he would follow them. One that I remember, he was working for a security company. He was on his lunch break. He had gone like to a fast food place, got his food, and was sitting in his car in the parking lot eating it, and he heard somebody playing piano. And he, for whatever reason, was really fascinated by hearing her play the piano and walked over there, and that was his next project. That's what drew him to her, and he would follow them, learn their routines, you know, learn everything about them, and he would do this for quite some time. He didn't just pick somebody and then boom, take them out. No, he studied them. And like I said, they were called his projects. And I feel like that's probably similar to this guy. I do too, Sky. I do. I feel bad for his family. I even said to my husband, I said, I can't imagine, because Bryan Enton is in Pennsylvania right now, and his family lives in a private gated community. And of course, Bryan Enton, being Bryan Enton, found a way to get in and walked right up to the door and rang the doorbell. And the dad or some male from inside said, you know, basically, get off my property. And Bryan Enton said, do you have anything to say about Bryan? And they were like, you need to leave my property. And I was talking to my husband and I said, can you imagine, you know, your kids are home for Christmas You're excited because they're coming home for Christmas. And then the SWAT team busts in and arrests them for 4 murders. Like, how do you wrap your mind around that? And as much as I love Brian Enton, even if he showed up at my door, I don't know that I would answer it and have anything to say. I would not know what to say. You always want to believe the best in your kids, right? And obviously you're going to say, there's no way that my kid could have done something like this. But if in the back of your mind there's something telling you, oh, but wait, remember this, or oh, what about that, and it starts to sink in, I would be sick. And we don't know what evidence they have on him, and it's going to be hard. I mean, obviously, probably right now they're still saying, no, not our son. But when the evidence starts to come out and they have a solid case against him, I don't envy them at all. At all. Hi, Linda. Did you see what I'm wearing, Linda? Yeah, I would like to know what his reaction was when it came out about the Elantra. That they... Hi, Kira. Welcome. Happy New Year. What do you think his reaction was when they came out and they said, we're looking for this white Elantra. We caught it on camera. It was near the crime scene. You know, I wonder if he had an oh shit moment or if he still was like, nah, they're not going to connect it to me. I mean, like I said, it's interesting. It's ballsy that he didn't do anything to try to hide the car, to get rid of the car, anything like that. Okay, so I'm quite sure he didn't call into the police and say, oh, yeah, I drive a white Hyundai Elantra. And I bet he'll say, well, they were looking for a 2011 to a 2013, and I drive a 2015, so I didn't need to call. And then all of his neighbors and everybody just assumed that the car had been cleared. Since they saw it every day and they saw him driving it, they assumed it had been cleared. So, ooh, sorry. My husband must have dropped something. My God. But yeah, I'm anxious for the probable cause affidavit to come out. I don't know how much will be in it, but we should get an idea of some of the evidence that they have on him. And man, I hope it's strong. The worst possible outcome of this is he finds a loophole and gets out of it. That would be devastating to the families, to law enforcement, to everybody. And I don't want to see it happen. I hope that his attorney cannot find some sort of legal loophole to get this guy out. Yeah, Sky, there's a lot of things that they did that I wonder in hindsight now if they did it to make him feel comfortable or safer. A lot. Yeah, I hope the DNA is what I'm worried about. You know, I hope it's a good amount of DNA that doesn't belong where they found it. You know, I hope that they can nail him to the wall with DNA, because a lot of times with, you know, what they call the CSI effect, that's what juries are looking for. They want DNA. They want to see that DNA. If you don't have DNA evidence, they're not interested a lot of the time. And that should nail him if they have good DNA evidence. I definitely believe that. But it could take a while. I mean, if he's waiving extradition, I'm anxious to see if, you know, he goes ahead and tries to get like a speedy trial. I'm anxious to see how long he will drag that out. Not give them as much time to prepare. But hopefully they'll get on with it, and I can't imagine them not going for the death penalty. He's being charged with 4 counts of first-degree murder and felony burglary for entering the house with the intention of committing the murders. So I can't imagine them not going for it. I mean, it would be easy to go for it on 1 count, never mind 4. So, I don't know, but I'm going to start wrapping this up. I've kept you guys here for about an hour and 15 minutes. I'm surprised anybody was here. I was like, it's New Year's Day. Is anybody even going to be on YouTube today? I don't know. But I do thank you for coming by and hanging out with me for a little while. Yeah, Betty, that's my guess, is he's going to claim it was compromised. It was contaminated somehow. But, alright guys, like I said, I'm going to wrap it up. See if I can be of any assistance to my husband. And I've got our New Year's Day meal to cook. It's a southern thing. You have to eat black-eyed peas on New Year's Day. And cornbread. So we're going to do that, and I will make a couple more videos. I'm going to do, thank you, Sky. I'm going to do a couple more videos about this guy, just different connections and signs and things that stick out to me. I'm also going to jump back into the Madalena Kojikari case, and yeah, so we got through our first video of 2023. Yeehaw. I hope y'all are having a good first day of the new year, and that this whole new year will be great for all of you. I know, Betty, she said, ick, black-eyed peas. I used to not eat them, and my mom would make me eat at least one every year when I was little. She'd put it on like the fork and with something else and make me eat at least one, and I would try to just swallow it without chewing. It's called Hoppin' John, and it's got all kinds of different stuff in it, and you can't even really taste them, so. But, yeah. Oh, yeah, and Monkey. That case breaks my heart as well. Little Michael Vaughn. Yeah, there's a lot that we need to cover at the beginning of this year that we can't let go, that we can't let get swept under the rug. They all deserve our attention. And now that this one is maybe slowing down a little bit, it's going to give us more time to get back into these others that are just as important. So, all right, you guys, everybody have a great rest of your day, and I will see you again really soon, probably tomorrow. I love you all. Thank you for stopping by and hanging out for a little bit. And as always, I will see you all in the next one.